I can't believe I didn't make it. I only had 8 slides left, but all right, we'll finish it off. Just take a few minutes. We're talking about diabetes. We're talking about the pancreas, islets and Langerhans. This is where we're going to go ahead and get our insulin and glucagon. Insulin is always associated with different types of diabetes. The most common type of diabetes is something called diabetes mellitus, and there are 2 different forms. There is a different types of diabetes called diabetes insipidus, and we actually will talk about that when we get into AP. Yeah, I keep talking about AP. It's fabulous. You'll love it. But we do have the most common type that people refer to as type 2 or adult onset. And so we've went through all of these. And again, diet is very important. We are white bread eaters. We should not be way too many carbohydrates in our diet, because remember, carbs, this goes back to the chemistry and the nutrition stuff that we're talking about. Carbs will go ahead and break down into simple sugars. If you have a really processed bread or wheat products, it goes into sugars very quickly. If you're eating something that's a little bit of a denser whole wheat multi-grain bread, there's a lot more that needs to happen to break it down. So those carbs are actually better for you. So I'm sorry, Wonder Bread, not the way to go, at least not every day. All right, so type 1, this is considered early onset. So this used to be called the childhood diabetes, but it's an autoimmune disorder that runs in families, and for whatever reason, the pancreatic cells are attacked and then cannot produce the insulin. So you can see that there's a little bit different here. These over here, cells don't respond to the insulin. On this side over here, the cells aren't actually making the insulin. So you simply go ahead and give them insulin. So they'll need insulin injections for this. There are a whole bunch of different medications for type 2 as well. But that's the basic gist of the 2. Alright, now remember, everything and anything that has to do with hormones for reproduction, we will talk about in reproduction. All you need to know right now is that gonads in male folks are going to go ahead and produce androgens, and that's testosterone, and it gives them all their maleness, their lower voice, the larynx, pattern of hair growth, all of that is based on androgens. For females, it's all about the ovaries, so we're talking about estrogen and progesterone. Yes, we get 2 sets that we get to worry about, but again, gives us our secondary sex characteristics, is always constantly involved in the maturation of eggs every single month, and so those are those lovelies, and we will talk about their cycle. And yes, menfolk have a cycle too. It's just not as obvious as women, but their cycle will actually match up with a female cycle, and that has to do with the pheromones. Remember that scent that we give off that we don't necessarily smell, but are detected. So we're not necessarily conscious of it, but it's definitely there. And the whole purpose for having those 2 line up with each other is to make sure we have more offspring, and that way the species can survive. But there is definitely a loop, and if you look at it real quick, again, we're going to focus a whole bunch of time on this when we get into reproduction, but you can see that it starts off with 2 very similar hormones, and it's simply that their target is a different target, testes and ovaries. But as we learn in development, we all start off as girls. And so this ovary and this testes started off from the same organ way back when at week 6 of development in utero. So it makes sense that these hormones are the same ones. It's just that these ended up developing into different things. Sperm generator, egg generator. All right. Alright, thymus, we did talk about it. This is why you should go ahead and make sure your kids are exposed to things so they can actually develop an immune system. It is not good to keep healthy kids in a bubble. They'll just end up getting sick later in life. So this lies right beneath your sternum. This gland, of course, is going to be larger in children than it will be in adults because it's more active. It's learning more things than an adult would. These are where T sites, so T lymphocytes, our T cells are matured, and that's really easy to remember because you have T and T. So thymus and T cells go together. And they do go ahead and secrete hormones. These guys are called thymoicins. Oh, it's so wonderful. The name goes with the name. I love that. And the whole point of this hormone is to go ahead and get different types of T cells. You don't want all of your T cells to be the same type. T cells are specific to the invaders in your body. So if you only have one type of T cell and you're invaded by multiple different types of pathogens, you're doomed because you can only fight off one of them. So it's really important for people to have this hormone in order for those T cells to become specific to different things that can invade you. Right? This one we talked about, it's our pineal gland. It is located in the brain, and it's supposed to look like a pine tree. I know we didn't see it. It's a little bit more abstract, but that's where the name comes from, pineal gland, pine tree. All right, it secretes melatonin. You can buy the stuff GNC, Heinen's, wherever, and it's supposed to help regulate your sleep and wake cycle. So if you are having a harder time sleeping, you can go ahead and take some melatonin, and it'll help you. However, if you take melatonin all the time, your pineal gland will be like, what's the point of me? And stop producing it. So you have to be really careful. This is something that you supplement every now and again, but you do not take the job away from the pineal gland. Okay? He needs to be doing something too. Recently, they also found out it might actually help regulate sexual development. So the perception of you, of yourself, and the development of sexual characteristics. Okay. Other hormones and other tissues, we already talked about EPO. Remember Lance Armstrong? Shame on him, who had a whole bunch of red blood cells. Not necessarily a good thing because then you have some really thick blood. So not the best thing to do. But EPO comes from our kidneys. Then there's something called leptin. This one's odd because we usually don't think of adipose or fat cells creating any type of hormone. But it does. It actually tells your brain, your hypothalamus specifically, that it's full. So if somebody has a leptin receptor or a leptin disorder, they're going to go ahead and be extremely hungry. We were talking about this in class, that they just want to eat because they think they're starving because their fat cells never told the brain, hey, I'm full. So it's very, very interesting, and they're working on it for some people who might have that type of obesity. Not for everybody. Okay. Prostaglandins we did talk about. These are the hormones that are simply between neighboring cells. So for smooth muscle contraction, reproductive organs, males, actually part of semen has prostaglandins in it, and it influences the contraction of the female uterus. So prostaglandins from the male can actually go ahead and influence the female's physiology, which is just really kind of interesting to think. Again, the whole purpose is to get that little sperm to that egg to keep the species going. There are a whole bunch of other different roles. Aspirin and ibuprofen actually goes ahead and blocks these, so the pain reception is blocked, and that's how they end up working. They also work with something called substance P. That's an AP thing. I know. I'll talk more about it later. All right. Homeostasis is our whole plan in life. If you can get up in the morning and you are maintaining homeostasis, you have succeeded. Everything else on that day is just icing on the cake. So nervous system and endocrine system apparently work together. We know that the hypothalamus is the one that speaks between the two. They're the translator. And we know that the nervous system is much more quicker, but the endocrine system is much more long-term. Okay? And if you look at this, this is where everybody is functioning and relating to each other. And you can see it's not just one system. It overlaps everywhere. If you go ahead and mess with your pancreas, you're messing with everything. If you mess with your kidneys, you're messing with everything. Everything overlaps. And so what we need to do once we get this overview through, we're going to start looking at an AP1 and 2. How do they overlap? And your job as a nurse is, if you're fixing one thing, is it going to mess up the homeostasis of something else? So you have to be really careful on how you're trying to balance something off when the body can't do it anymore. So that's it. I'm done. Thank you so much. You guys are always so very flexible with everything. If you need anything at any point, you can email the profdionysus@gmail if you want, or the school email, or you can even put questions right on there on Blackboard with Ask Your Instructor. So thank you so much, guys. Bye.